My name's Phil Workman. A lot of you folks we met the other time, and we've talked to some of you on the phone and in the neighborhood. Um, I'm with the Faulkner Company, as is Jason Morrison, and we are working here with the owner, Rich Kraus, and he'll introduce himself here in a second and tell his story a little bit about this property and where we're looking to go with it. But basically, the reason we're here is, as you know, this lot's been empty for a number of years. I think 8 or 9 years when the market was here. Um, During that time, there was a site plan that was approved by the city under the previous zoning, the R4 zoning, which allowed for a 75-foot building, 63,000 square feet building, which had at the time 24 residential condos as part of the development. This was approved. It was an approved site plan by the city and county of Denver, and was ready to be built. And then, as all of you know or aware, and hopefully not impacted too greatly by it, but the housing, everything just cratered, and they were unable to build that development as they intended. Uh, Rich subsequently got involved with Matt, who's also here, with the purchased the property with the approved site plan on the property, which made it really appealing was because you could build, we had that approved envelope, so to speak. Now, there were a lot of issues with that, and we talked a lot with the neighborhood as far as the aesthetics. They weren't really too jazzed about the way it looked, and this is part of our conversation tonight too, because a lot of what we've heard, a lot of what we've talked about is, well, we understand we want development here. We understand, your envelope, and this was the envelope of previously approved site plan, and you're wanting to kind of maintain that, but we really want to hear from you. It's like, how does that continue to look and feel, and what your ideas are, how it meshes within the neighborhood. So that'll be part of our conversation tonight. Uh, we preserved that site plan so that we could build to that, and we were thinking with the city, we were working with the city to change some of the aesthetics, but yet provide for a more feasible, viable development, because 24 residential units, they were each over 2,000 square feet. I mean, it was just really not a viable product. We worked with them on separate different avenues of ways to preserve that original site plan, at the same time, redo the interior. And at the end of the day, we said, you know what, it's just better, it's easier. We want to preserve what the envelope is, but we should rezone and do it right. A lot of times, the city was like, this is really kind of, why don't you just do it? Do it and do it right. So that's why we're here tonight. We're looking forward to rezoning the property. We've filed an application with the city. Sarah Showalter from the City and County of Denver is here in the audience as well. And we have filed an application to rezone the property to GRX5, which would allow potentially five stories of residential, multifamily residential, with the possibility. The zoning allows the possibility for a retail type component, but that's also part of our conversation too, because really what the interest, and Rich will talk to this, what the interest has been for residential in this area. There's a lot of reasons why. I mean, this area is so attractive to folks because they want to live here, and the proximity to Downing and the proximity to the redevelopment of St. Joe's. So we currently do have our application in with the City and County of Denver. We're very excited to be in front of you again, and just wanted to continue our conversation. And now I'll just turn it over to Rich Kraus, who's the owner of this property, and he'll kind of give you background of his interest and where we're going, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the plan of the project.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I thought there was a question already.
And we'll have Q&A.
My name is Rich Kraus. I'm a partner with Matt Roth, who's in the rear here. We have owned this property since 2009, and immediately we saw, the potential for it. We had looked at the old plans, and immediately also didn't really like the elevations of them. They're pretty cliche. We thought they looked kind of applique, if you will, the look of it. So that was one thing that kind of turned us off. So one of the things that we started to do immediately was to talk about how we could get a more viable project in here. Well, as you all probably know, over the past several years, the vacancy rate in apartments has gone down to a 13-year low. We're at 4.3% vacancy right now, and for Denver, it hasn't been that low for 13 years. In addition to that, for the last 15 quarters, the vacancy rate has been declining. So there's big pressure on building rents. The supply is still not where the demand needs to be, but it's starting to be filled in other areas. So this is an area that hasn't really responded to that, we don't think, adequately, especially based on the economic engines that we have around here, particularly the St. Joe Hospital. So one of the things that is also happening is that even though interest rates are low, the people that we do know in the multifamily business are telling us that renting is a trend regardless. Even with some historic low rents, even though they've popped up a little bit recently, historically, that would pull people out of the rental market and put them into the purchase market. Well, what we're being told, and this is admittedly secondhand, but we're being told that renting is a trend. That with the flexibility that a lot of the young people need to move, to somebody that's a radiologist at St. Joe may get promoted to a Exempla hospital in Seattle. They want to be able to rent. They want a nice place to live. They want something that's proximate. They want something that's close to public transportation, and they want a neighborhood. And we really believe this is a neighborhood that people would really enjoy living in. And as Phil said, one of the things that we'd like to do with this plan is to be able to have the ability to have some retail on the first floor. The old plan, which was 5 feet higher than ours, was 75 feet. It had to have all its parking, or part of its parking, on the grade level. So instead of having a really nice walk-up kind of a storefront, if you will, they had a parking garage wall like this. So it was very sterile. So what we immediately looked at was how do we make this more of an urban feel? How do we get it there? Well, we tried to do that in the existing envelope. It just didn't work. Particularly from an economic standpoint, it'd be crazy because the market for condos was really going south when we started it, and we really don't feel the market is there still for high-end condos of 22 to 2,400 square feet apiece. So, and then further encouraging us for this neighborhood was the fact that some of the apartment projects that had been anticipated to come about as a result of the hospital activity haven't really come to fruition. Now, these are enormous projects that have 500-600 units potentially. We're looking at 55 to 60 rental units here that can accommodate people who work at the hospital, people that want to get downtown easily, that want to be in this neighborhood but can't afford to be in this neighborhood other than for renting. So we think that's a good, a really good start for kind of planting the flag here. Pardon me. I still am trying to find out whether or not, for the information that I have, which is secondhand, and I rely on our consultants for this, but this may or may not be in a registered neighborhood organization, but I am convinced this is an important neighborhood regardless of what kind of a line you put around it or what kind of RNO name you give to it. This is a really important neighborhood, I think, for realizing what are going to be the economic benefits of this hospital. I mean, it's what makes things grow. And frankly, one of my concerns is that when areas like this don't take advantage of it, what happens is it goes to the next cycle. Let's be honest, there is going to be a cycle where real estate's going to bust again, rentals are going to bust again, there's going to be a cycle, it happens. And what happens in neighborhoods that don't get a little bit of a head start, or at least have some new investment, is twofold. One is that they have to go through a complete new cycle before they get an increase in their values. And on a rental project, obviously that's important because you need to be able to, support your rents and be able to lease it. But for people that own homes, it's just as important, because if there isn't an increase in values in this neighborhood, you're not going to be able to get a as big of a loan, or not that you want to lever up that big, or have lots of debt, but you're not going to be able to as easily borrow money for a remodel, borrow money for an addition to a church, borrow money for anything that really starts to improve that neighborhood. So we really feel like this is a nice spot that's not enormous, that kind of plants that flag and really starts to get things going. The other thing is that after a while, if for example, the people who may be employed by St. Joe or even St. Luke's and some of the other hospital areas here or neighborhoods, when people come in from out of town, we were just talking about this with Dr. Brannigan. When people come into town, they don't understand this neighborhood yet. Honestly, I don't either. I'm starting to understand it, see what kind of people live here, but they're not as likely to invest in a neighborhood that doesn't have any obvious investment in it. So it'd be different if there was lots of remodeling going on. If there was lots of, but the reality is that there's only so much that we can do in the neighborhood at this point in time that will accrue to being able to afford to do that just from a pure economic standpoint. Whereas if you start to thoughtfully develop new projects and make them fit into the neighborhood, then it becomes not just obvious to the people who live here, but it becomes obvious to the people from the outside that you've got, wow, that is a really nice neighborhood. And I hear that this, whatever you want to call it here, the neighborhood, San Rafael, City Park West, whatever you want to call it, especially toward the hospital, is a nice niche place to live. And I think that everyone would like that. And I hope that I'm through plan approval at administrative level at the city. We're not asking for you to approve a building type. We're just asking for the zoning, for you to allow us to get this done to a GRX5, which allows for some of that retail down below. The reason we did that was that we thought that it might be good to have a coffee shop, a bakery, a donut shop, just something neighborhood that kind of pulls people who are walking from way up there. It's kind of a stepping off point between there and the hospital, just to kind of create a little more pedestrian activity in here too. We think that this site plan is also very positive because it does increase density. But we're looking at that, especially the city is. That's why they went to one of the tenets of the new zoning code is that density is good. It uses resources well. I mean, let's face it, the city's not going to have money to do, what the Lone Trees of the world do in the Centennials, where they keep spreading out. The infrastructure is here, and the city of Denver needs to take advantage of the fact that it's got good water, sewer, all sorts of good facilities here that this project, like others, can take advantage of and really see the full effects of the positive part of density. And that's been a tenet, I think Phil knows more about that than I do, of the rezoning, but also a part of what the mayor wants and what the former mayor actually was looking for as well. One thing that I have to impress upon you, and one thing I do know about the real estate business, having been in the commercial side for 34 years, is that it has to make sense economically. And we can fool ourselves that that this project's worth $10 million, or we can tell us that, okay, I can sell a single family home here for $1.5 million or $1 million or whatever. I think that the way to look at this is that the project has to make sense for someone to have the confidence to invest in that neighborhood. And that investment is more than likely going to come with somebody who can take a little bit of a chance on a project that's big enough and who has the capital and wherewithal to do something just big enough to make a difference. If we were just doing 2 or 3 homes in here, it's not going to move the needle at all. It might look nice, but it's not going to. From the experts that we talked to, including ARA, Marcus and Millichap, Fuller, CBRE, all of these people are telling us that in order for them to deliver this to a developer, they need to have at least 55 units. Okay, and we've heard that over and over, and that can attest to that. This new development, again, it's not that I have anything particularly against the old development, but like I said, it was very cliche. It had all these bow ties and this corrugated metal. It had all the doodads on it that were popular for about 20 minutes in 1996. You know, I mean,